Aragorn threw back his cloak. The elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Anduril shone like a sudden flame as he swept it out. "Elendil," he cried, "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and I'm called Elisar, the Elfstone, Dunedain, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly."
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we are reading Book 3, Chapter 2, The Riders of Rohan. My name is Logan.
And my name is Zach.
Giddy up!
This is a great chapter. We are introduced to the Riders of Rohan in this chapter. We are given a front row seat to the world's sickest ultramarathon.
Hell yeah.
Gimli's got the Book of Mirazabul on his back. Aragorn's putting his ear to the ground. Legolas is looking past like human capability to see their enemy running before them. And they are running like the whips of their masters are behind them, baby.
This chapter has so much world building. We get introduced to Rohan. We get introduced to Fangorn. We get introduced to these abilities that the elves have. Elves become even weirder in this chapter, right?
Big time. Big time.
And like it's all like so like expertly folded into the narrative, you know, and the action that's happening. Like we're just like swept along by the narrative, but then like he'll like drop in like,
oh, and by the way, elves don't sleep. It's like, what?
Yeah, like Legolas like blending dreams and night, you know.
Yeah, he's able to like sleep while he runs.
That's so cool. I just love it. What a great way to, you know, start this book. To go from the funeral of Boromir to this.
Oh, action-packed, start to finish. So before we begin, let's just kind of get on the same page about how much distance and over what period of time these three characters actually run, because I know, like, talking in leagues, you can get lost in, like, how many miles that is. So it says that they run 45 leagues over about 3.5 days. And so 45 leagues is about 135 miles.
Right.
So they run 45 miles per day.
Yeah.
Give or take.
That's far.
We've talked about this in the past, that people don't travel at the speed of plot in Lord of the Rings, right? So Tolkien is the type of person who had been in war, and he knew how far it was humanly possible for somebody to travel on foot with like a pack, you know? Generally speaking, like people don't go more than about 20 miles a day in Lord of the Rings if they're on foot. But, you know, when we meet Éomer here in a little while, he's like absolutely gobsmacked that they traveled that distance in such a short time.
I call you Wingfoot. I love that.
So what do you think? You want to just kind of jump into the chapter and start cooking? Or is there anything else you want to talk about?
Let's do it.
So it says here, like on the first page of the chapter, all night the three companions scrambled in this bony land, climbing to the crest of the first and tallest ridge and down again into the darkness of a deep, winding valley on the other side. So they're wearing these elven cloaks and they're running at night. So they're basically just like shadows going across the land. They're like invisible.
Yeah. And the whole time, you know, Strider, well, right now I think of him as Strider, Aragorn is, you know, reading clues, you know, making sure that they're on the right track. Right away, basically, they find five dead orcs.
Right. And it says like their heads are cut off of some of them.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
The ground is dark with their blood. And Gimli's like, here's another riddle. So he's like Watson, you know, and Aragorn is like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Aragorn, like, you know, kind of like stoops to the ground and looks at the signs. And Legolas is like, hey, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like, whoever did this, like, probably, like, we're okay with them. But he's like, do you think any folks dwell in these hills? I think he's basically asking, like, was this the Riders of Rohan? And Aragorn's like, the Rohirrim seldom come here, and it is far from Minas Tirith. It might be that some company of men were hunting here for reasons I do not know, yet I think not. But then he says, I think that the enemy brought his own enemy with him. Which is pretty much a theme in Lord of the Rings, isn't it? That evil undoes itself. And all good people have to do is just kind of be patient. And they're not going to defeat evil by being stronger. They're just going to defeat evil by continuing to be good and waiting for evil to undo itself.
It's also, in the last episode you mentioned the schism between Saruman and Sauron and the way that these kind of different orc cultures clash. And so I think that's implicated here too.
Absolutely. So they continue on. They have this sign that there's a schism among the orcs. He says, there was a quarrel, I guess, and it's not an uncommon thing with these foul folk. Maybe there was some dispute over the road. And Gimli says, or about the captives. Let us hope that they too did not meet their end here. So, they don't know that Merry and Pippin are okay, but they continue on. We talked a little bit last episode about this, and this will come up when the Riders of Rohan come in a minute, but what is their plan here? Like, they're chasing after the orcs, but like, even if they are able to catch them, which doesn't seem likely because they have such a long head start, what are they trying to do? Like, when they actually catch up to them, are they trying to fight them in battle? Or are they trying to like find some way to get Merry and Pippin to escape, like setting some trick to try and get Merry and Pippin away? It's really unclear. I mean, I think we just have to assume that they think that they're going to die.
Yeah, it's more about not abandoning your friends than it is about a heroic rescue. Although, I could imagine a version of the story where they catch up with the orcs, they come upon them, and these three are able to, contrive some trick to kind of, to get the orcs to like turn against each other again, or, to pursue them in some way, or maybe one of the characters sacrifices themselves while the other two, rescue Merry and Pippin. Like, there's a lot of ways the story could go. Yeah. I think that Tolkien takes the most unexpected and interesting road available here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I would not have written the story this way because I'm not that smart.
Because they kind of don't do anything, right? I mean, they chase after them, and it puts them in a place where they're like able to meet Gandalf again.
Right.
But like Merry and Pippin's like escape has nothing to do with their efforts here, even though it's like such a heroic effort. They don't actually affect the lives of Merry and Pippin at all.
Right. It's this incredible feat of athleticism and a heroic choice, but it serves the story in a way that's totally unexpected. And I think that's, it's just the genius of Tolkien at work.
It's like you don't do the right thing because you have foresight into what the future is, or like you don't do the right thing knowing that it's going to work out. Like, that almost makes it less noble to say like, oh, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to kind of get my reward at the end. They're doing this like either assuming they're going to die or that it'll all be in vain. And, that's what makes the scene of them arriving and seeing the pile of orc bodies so sad, is that they truly feel like they've failed, even with all this effort.
Yeah, that's right.
But they finally kind of like, because of this, finding these 5, orc bodies, they get back on the right path. There's this interesting aside here that I wanted to talk about. Aragorn sings himself another little song.
Yeah, sort of a lament that he can't turn toward Gondor.
Gondor, Gondor, what that I looked upon you again in happier hour. Not yet does my road lie southward to your bright streams. And then he sings a song about Gondor, between the mountains and the sea. But he knows, I mean, that's what he like promised Boromir at his death, is that he would return to Minas Tirith. And so that's his destiny. That's always in the future for him.
Does he fully understand or accept that Gondor is his destiny? Do you think?
I think that he does.
He's not reluctant, right?
He's not a reluctant hero.
Right.
Like in the movies, he says the line, I don't desire it. I never desired it. I don't want this burden. You know, the same weakness of Isildur runs in my veins. There's none of that in the book, which is partly why he's accused of being a flat character.
Right.
Because in the movie, he takes up the mantle of leadership before the Paths of the Dead.
Yeah, that's right.
Here, you know, we find out in the appendices that Elrond has said that he can't marry Arwen unless he becomes the sovereign of the combined kingdoms of Gondor and Arnor. Like, that's when he'll be worthy of Arwen, you know?
Yeah.
If he can reforge the two kingdoms of men the same way that they were able to reforge the shards of Narsil into Anduril, then, you know, he could be worthy of Arwen. So in the back of his mind, he's always like, okay, if I want to get that sweet marriage, then yeah, that's what's on the table. There's no other option.
Yeah. Yeah, the impossible task. I only have to do something impossible, basically impossible in order to...
The only thing that I got to do.
In order to marry my girlfriend.
Yes.
Maybe there's a little bit of that here too. Like, I got to get over there and claim the destiny of my forefathers and myself but for now I got to chase these little hobbits across the entire world.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, golly, all I want to do is marry my elf girlfriend.
Yeah. That's really what this story is about for Aragorn, is smooching Arwen.
For legal reasons, that's a joke. But yeah, they keep running. And, you know, here again, we see this eagle. We mentioned the eagle the last two chapters. We've been like, what is up with this eagle?
Mm-hmm.
So just about 10 pages ago, we had the eagle again. And Legolas says, like, look, there is the eagle again. So it's like, they're like, that's the same eagle that we saw before the orcs came, and that we saw a little while ago, that Aragorn saw up on Amon Hen. And now they see him again. He says, he is very high. He seems to be flying now away from this land back to the north. He is going with great speed. Look, what is his errand? Aragorn says.
Back to the north.
Yeah. And now Legolas is like looking out into the distance, and he's able to see the company of Uruk-hai that they're chasing after. Look, I can see something nearer at hand and more urgent. There's something moving over the plain. Many things, he says. It is a great company on foot, but I cannot say more, nor see what kind of folk they may be. They are many leagues away, 12, I guess, but the flatness of the plain is hard to measure. So they have 12 leagues of distance ahead of them.
36 miles.
About 36-mile head start.
We're told that the orcs have pressed on with all possible speed.
Yeah.
And as they go, they're coming across food bags and rinds and crusts of bread and torn cloaks and nailed shoes.
Right.
And so it's easy to follow, but it's not easy to catch up.
No. It's a clear path at this point. And that's when they find, you know, a sign that Merry and Pippin are alive. It says they went in single file, running like hounds on a strong scent, and an eager light was in their eyes. They're running strong. It says later, partly because of the fact that they're able to eat the limbus as they run. So they're able to eat without stopping.
Mm-hmm.
And Aragorn cries out and says, "Stay, do not follow me yet." He ran quickly to the right, off the main trail, and he saw the marks of small, unshod feet. These, however, did not go far before they were crossed out by orc prints. He says, "Yes, they're quite plain, a hobbit's footprints. Pippin's, I think. He's smaller than the others." So Aragorn's like, he knows like what people's like footprints in the company look like. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that detail.
It's like he like kind of like has it stored away. Like, oh, okay, that's a Frodo, that's a Gimli, that's a Legolas, that's a.
And Pippin is the youngest, right? So,
yeah. Right, he has the smallest feet.
Also makes him the smallest. Really interesting.
And then they find the brooch of an elven cloak. Is that how you pronounce that? Brooch or brooch?
Brooch.
Brooch?
Brooch. I would say brooch. The brooch of an elven cloak. And I love that it says, cried Legolas and Gimli together. So they became friends, right, in the last book. And now they're like really like a unit. they're like married to each other in some way. You know, that they're even saying the same thing at the same time. And then, of course, this is such a famous line: "Not idly do the leaves of Lorien fall." Beautiful.
This did not drop by chance. It was cast away as a token to any that might follow. I think Pippin ran away from the trail for that purpose.
So we get to see that Pippin and Merry's story is happening, and they're like doing their best to resist what's happening to them.
Right.
I would love to get like an interlinear, like chronological, edition of this where you could see like what's happening here and what's happening with Frodo and Sam and what's happening with Merry and Pippin all at the same time.
That would be really cool.
I don't know if that exists, but that would be so cool to have.
We kind of talked about what an interesting stylistic choice it is to split the book up into like kind of two streams at this point. Like we know that Frodo and Sam have their own story going on, but we're kind of moving forward in time just with, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, Merry, Pippin, and eventually Gandalf in a minute. And then we'll sort of like go backwards in time and hear Sam and Frodo's journey, like meeting Gollum and all these other kind of things, deciding to go to Shelob, running into Faramir. All that stuff is coming up, and it's a separate stream. But it does kind of make it a little hard to be like, all right, so where are Frodo and Sam while this is going on? Or like what exactly is going on with Merry and Pippin while Frodo and Sam are, kind of like hooking up with Gollum and going through the dead marshes or whatever. A little bit further on, Tolkien will start being like, and as these two characters did this, these two characters were experiencing this trouble, but they didn't know what each other was happening to each other. So he kind of gives us little hints on the timeline, but he like just absolutely be completely certain Tolkien had notes where he had it written out by day. And on these notes, he would list like where each character was on any given day, what stage of the moon it was on any given time of that day. Like he had it all figured out. Like it was all mapped out in notes, which you can see like some scans of online, which are really, really neat.
But they're online, but are they like published?
I think they're at like a university called Marquette, which is a university that bought the drafts.
Oh, in Wisconsin?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, interesting.
They're a Catholic university, and they, I think, realized pretty early on that, these would be interesting texts to have. And Tolkien was a little bit strapped for money at one point in time and sold all the documents. I think probably they have the largest collection of Tolkien's manuscripts of any university, and you can't just like go and look at them. And I know because I've tried. You have to be like, you have to have some sort of like research project that they're interested in supporting. But it's interesting, like even like the Bodleian Library at Oxford doesn't have as many manuscripts of the text as Marquette.
Wow, interesting. I'm glad they're at a university. That's cool.
I love that Gimli says, at least we know that they're alive, and that he had wits enough to do it, and he had legs that could run. So it shows that he's well enough to, leave us this sign. And Legolas, like kind of darkly, is like, let's just hope that he didn't pay too dearly for his boldness. He says, "Come, let us go. The thought of those merry young folk driven like cattle burns my heart."
They love these guys so much.
This is a great chapter. It's you really do get such an insight into their personalities. I feel like we've kind of gotten glimpses of it up until this point, but we've not had this like deep of an amount of time with these characters where they're the only people that are speaking. It's really neat to see them shine like this.
Yeah, the characterization here when, night starts to fall and they ask, now we have a hard choice. Should we rest or should we go on? Gimli is feeling a little tired, I think.
But he would never admit it.
No, but he says, surely even orcs must pause on the march. And then there's logistical issues too, where it's like, well, are we going to miss these signs in the dark?
Yeah.
If they get away somehow and we miss them, then, we'd really be failing.
Really lose too much time. Yeah.
This quest. And Legolas is willing to go on, but, he has super elf abilities, and
right.
It's really a whole page of what do we do? They still have to make choices.
I love that. So like, Gimli won't admit that he needs to take a break, but he clearly is like hoping that they will suggest it because he doesn't want to be the one who says like, "Hey, I can't go any further." And Legolas like is really against stopping. He's like, "Look, orcs usually only come out at night. These orcs are running during the day, which means they're different. Like they're special. And if they're not stopping during the day, they surely won't stop at night. And we already found out they're 36 miles ahead of them already." And he's like, "Hey, if we rest, then they'll get too far a lead on us. I don't think we should stop." He's like, "The trail is straight and turns neither left nor right as far as my eye can see." But Gimli is kind of like, "Yeah, but if they turn and we keep going straight, then we're toast. So we should really take a break."
But ultimately, they both leave it up to Aragorn. Aragorn says, "How shall we end this debate?" And Gimli says, "You're our guide. You shall choose." And then Legolas also, even though he maybe disagrees that we should stop, he says we have to hold together. "I'll follow your counsel." And then again, this is the 5th time Aragorn questions himself. "You give the choice to an ill chooser. Since we passed through the Argonath, my choices have gone amiss." And so again, I think something about that kingly moment that he had in the Argonath kind of throws him off or something.
Yeah, shakes his confidence.
Yeah, he's still just supposed to be like a tracker in this moment. And so that's the choice he makes. We won't walk in the dark because the peril of the trail or signs of other coming and going seems to me the greater. So missing those signs would be a real mistake. And then even a 6th time he says, "A vain pursuit from its beginning maybe, which no choice of mine can mar or mend." He just is not confident in his ability to choose still, but he is confident in his abilities as a tracker.
And it's almost like he's saying, like, there's a humility in what he's saying. He's saying, we have chosen to take ourselves off of the main quest. By following after Pippin and Merry, we are choosing to basically cede the real quest to Frodo and Sam. So he's saying, like, with Frodo lies the true quest. Ours is but a small matter in the great deeds of this time. He's like, nobody's going to write a story about this. We're probably just going to die, which the irony of that is like so, beautiful. No, actually, you're going to be remembered for this forever. And people are going to write songs about it. And the most popular book of the 20th century will feature it prominently.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, once they make a decision, one thing that we kind of, we talked about, but we didn't like really fully articulate, I think, the implication. Like when they find the orcs that are dead, they're Mordor orcs. So in the last chapter, they established that there are Mordor orcs and there are Isengard orcs. And when they find the 5 dead bodies, they're like, oh, these are the Mordor orcs, which means that now if we're reading the signs correctly, the Isengard orcs won whatever debate they were having, which is probably whether to go to Mordor or whether to go to Isengard, which means that they're going towards Isengard. So now they have like a clear direction. Like even if they're not following their path exactly, they're like, if we can go the direction of Isengard, we know that we're going to kind of be going the same direction that they're going. But they have this debate. They decide to stop. I love Gimli's line here. "And yet even I, dwarf of many journeys, and not the least hardy of my folk, cannot run all the way to Isengard without any pause." So Aragorn, I think recognizing that Gimli just can't go on, it ultimately decides we rest tonight.
They're so like careful with each other, They're like he's not going to let Gimli lose face because he collapses the next day or during the night because he's too tired.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in the like really just after Moria, we had the lines like curse the stiff necks of dwarves. They weren't as close as they are now. Now they're tight, and they're not going to openly mock each other and be like, "Come on, man, if we stop, we're going to lose them. Like, how dare you?" No, they're like, "We're going to take a rest." And it says that Aragorn is so tired that he cast himself on the ground and fell asleep at once because he hasn't slept in a couple days at this point.
Yep.
They wake up the next morning. Aragorn says they are far, far away. I know in my heart that they have not rested this night. Only an eagle could overtake them now. Nonetheless, we will follow as we may.
And I love this this line. Aragorn says, "Where sight fails, the earth may bring us rumor." And then he does this ground listening thing.
Yeah, he puts his ear to the ground. He's like, the rumor of the earth is dim and confused. Nothing walks upon it for many miles about us. Faint and far are the feet of our enemies, but loud are the hooves of horses. So, and then he says that he had dreams about the Rohirrim the night before, that they had like almost like haunted his dreams.
Yeah.
So at this point, they're running without hope. Like before, they thought maybe we can catch up. By the time they get to the end of yesterday, they're already 12 leagues ahead. And there's really no way we can catch them. And then they decided to take the rest. And that was, a disaster. Now, God knows how far away they are.
We're already on the third day of the pursuit. I'm only 6 pages into the chapter, but it says the third day of their pursuit began, and it's only 2 paragraphs till we get to dusk again. That sort of surprised me when I read it this time, because I kind of thought of the chapter of them running the entire time, but it's not exactly that way.
No. So it says, at dusk they halted again. Now twice 12 leagues they had passed over the plains of Rohan. So, they've run a really far way, but they're realizing now that the likelihood of them catching them is very low. And it says, "Now do I most grudge the time of rest or any halt in our chase," says Legolas. "The orcs have run before us as if the very whips of Sauron were behind them. I fear that they have already reached the forest and the dark hills, and even now are passing into the shadows of the trees." Then Gimli responds, "This is a bitter end to our hope and to our toil." And Aragorn is like, "To hope maybe, but not to toil."
What a great line.
We are not stopping.
Right. Sometimes the toil, even without hope, toil, like the work or the labor, is meaningful or necessary or just called for. But there's a weirdness over them also.
Yeah, the weariness is not just from how far they're running. There's a spiritual weariness.
Yeah, I distrust even the pale moon. The stars are faint, and I'm weary as I've seldom been before, weary as no ranger should be with a clear trail to follow.
There's some will that lends speed to our foes and sets an unseen barrier before us, a weariness that is in the heart more than in the limb.
And Legolas agrees with them that there's something against us.
And in my notes here, talking about kind of the weariness of their heart, I have Sauron's power written in the margins, and that's definitely something that Sauron does. But Aragorn, it says Saruman, ! But he shall not turn us back. Halt we must once more, for see, even the moon is failing into gathering cloud. But north lies our road down in the fen when day returns. So Aragorn seems to imply like this is like the wizardry of Sauron, that he is making us like essentially depressed. Like he's saying like, the spiritual weariness is preventing us from having hope.
Yeah, I had the same thought as I was reading. I was thinking of Sauron, and we had discussed in the last, toward the end of the last book, that the closer you get to Mordor, the more that kind of spiritual wickedness of the place starts to influence you. But, Saruman kind of casting him in the same role as Sauron, has a similar kind of power and seeks to break your will more than your body. And it's even more, I don't know, like Sauron is so removed through so much of the story that somehow Saruman being there and, the goodness that he's supposed to represent in Middle-earth, it's like extra, it's more, I don't know, it's more affecting to me that Saruman also is, now they're up against it and they're up against this other guy,
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do rest, except
it was a day and a half before them that the orcs were in that same spot.
Yeah. But we get another detail here about Legolas, that Legolas was first afoot, if indeed he had ever slept.
You want to talk about elf dreams?
Yeah, so they don't really sleep the same way that we sleep. They just have this like waking memory that somehow helps them rest, or it's almost like a nostalgia or
That's a great
something
way of
like
putting
that.
it. Like they're able to refresh themselves by like walking in their memories.
Elves are kind of, some of their melancholy comes from the fact that they live so long and they can't actualize in the present or something. Like they literally live in the past every night.
Yeah.
And so they're like spread across such a long amount of time. And I think maybe this plays into that. They don't just dream dreams, they literally, live in both places at once or something like that. That timelessness, I think, it's almost like homesickness is like an inability to attach to the present moment or to your like place. And that creates melancholy. And so there's, like, because I was kind of, I've been questioning, like, why are the elves they're so strange. They're so different than human beings, and there's like this deep longing to like leave and to return but that's because they're not psychologically, they're really different than humans. They represent some piece of humanity's, our inability often to be fully embodied and called into our place.
And like of the three of them, that makes it so that he's the most hopeful. Like he's the most rested because he's able to rest. Like it says, like even as he runs, he's able to basically sleep and
He's
like recharge
fresh.
himself.
Yeah.
He's fresh. Like his feet don't even like make a mark on the grass. But in Gimli, it says Gimli's back was bent. Stone hard are the dwarves in labor or journey, but this endless chase began to tell on him, and all hope failed in his heart. Essentially, Gimli's like, okay, we have to halt again. Sorry, everyone. Like can't go further. But Legolas like encourages him. He says, rest if you must, yet do not cast all hope away. Tomorrow is unknown. Reed off is found at the rising of the sun. So that's reed, R-E-D-E, which is a word I wasn't familiar with. I looked up that it means advice.
Yeah.
So like sorrow may last for a night, but hope comes in the morning.
And I think it's reed. It's etymologically related to like redemption. Reed, redemption, counsel, advice. Yeah. Sleep it off. It's like it's like such hackneyed advice, but it's really true that if like you're having a bad day and you go to sleep and wake up in the morning, you'll probably feel a little better in the morning.
That's advice that I've given my children ever since they were little. You'll feel better if you get a good night's rest. So I don't know if we can say they got a good night's rest, but the next morning they see that riders are coming. Legolas helpfully lets them know that there are 105. So
I like that he could just count them all really, really quick.
And that they're 5 leagues away and on fast moving horses. So, and they're coming down the path that the orcs have made, which is a bad sign. Gimli says basically like, hey, we can't escape them. We're like in an open plain and they're on horse. And Aragorn's like, all right, we're just going to sit here. He says, I am weary and our hunt has failed. Or at least others were before us, for these horsemen are riding back down the orc trail. We may get news from them. And Gimli says, or spears. So it's like, all right, we're not sure like what's going to happen. Either we're going to get news or we're going to get killed. But either way, we're just going to sit down. Let's listen to this like description of the Rohirrim as they come closer. Their horses were of great stature, strong and clean-limbed. Their gray coats glistened, their long tails flowed in the wind. Their manes were braided on their proud necks. The men that rode them matched them well, tall and long-limbed. Their hair, flaxen pale, flowed under their light helms and streamed in long braids behind them. Their faces were stern and keen. In their hands were tall spears of ash. Painted shields were slung at their backs. Long swords were at their belts. Their burnished shirts of mail hung down upon their knees.
Yeah, this is a war party, you know.
Yeah.
They're fully kitted out, and they have spears for when they're on horseback, and then the swords. A long time ago, we talked about who has a sword in this world, and these guys are some of them.
That's right. So they are basically just like sitting in the grass.
And they gallop. This whole group just kind of gallops right, or is about to gallop right by them.
Yeah, they don't see them. So like, you know, Gimli wasn't necessarily right. I mean, it's because of the cloaks that they're wearing. They just blend right in with the grass. And so Aragorn stands up and calls out in a loud voice, "What news from the north, Riders of Rohan?" And then they turn around.
Yeah, we get this like, as a group, they sort of wheel around. They're so in sync, you know. They've obviously like trained together and been together for a long time.
You almost like imagine like a flock of birds, like, you know, that one changes direction and all the rest of them follow.
They don't even need to say anything. It says, without a word or cry, the riders halted.
And they got their arrows fitted in the strings. You know, they're ready to shoot. And a rider using the common speech of the West asks, "Who are you and what are you doing in this land?" And I think it's really interesting. Aragorn's response is, "I'm called Strider." Like, yeah, he's in Strider mode, baby. He's like living into that. I think we even used that phrase several times. Like, he is like Strider right now. You know, he's not Aragorn, he's Strider. So it's interesting that he introduces himself that way.
And he's sort of rankled against that name before. I think he says, like, you know, fat men in Bree call me Strider.
And I'm called Strider by a fat man in Bree whose heart would quail if he knew like what evils were at his borders. Yeah,
right. But he needs to be Strider right now, you know, and so yeah, the fact that he uses that name for himself is pretty cool.
But he says, I'm hunting orcs that come out of the north, and the rider kind of almost nonchalantly is like, "Yeah, we got them already. They were swift and well armed, and they were many. You would have changed from hunters to prey if ever you had overtaken them." And then he asks him, he goes, "Strider, like, that's no name of a man. And strange too is your raiment. Have you sprung out of the grass? How did you escape our sight? Are you elvish folk?" And he's like, "Yeah, one of us is an elf. One of us is a dwarf. And I'm a man." But he's like, "But we got our raiment from the Lady of the Wood." And that's when Éomer's like, "The Lady of the Wood, like, hey, like, nobody gets away from her."
Yeah, you didn't just spring out of the grass, you sprung out of legend, you know?
Yeah. It's like you're like an old wives' tale just like brought back from...
Right. Does she even exist? In a way, you know?
I thought it was interesting. It says, "Then there is a lady in the Golden Wood, as old tales tell. Few escape her nets, they say. These are strange days. But if you have her favor, then you also are net weavers and sorcerers, maybe." So I think it's interesting that he calls her a net weaver, because one thing that we did learn is that the cloaks that they're wearing were weaved by Galadriel herself and her ladies. And so there's almost this like connection between weaving and sorcery.
Yeah, it says that there's spells woven about the daggers that Merry and Pippin dropped.
And then we get the best line where he says, "Why do you not speak, silent ones?" Éomer says this to Gimli and Legolas. It says, "Gimli rose and planted his feet firmly apart. His hand gripped the handle of his axe, and his dark eyes flashed. 'Give me your name, horse master, and I will give you mine, and more besides.'"
He's not afraid of anything. So great.
Éomer responds, "The stranger should declare himself first. Yeah, I am named Éomer, son of Éamund, and am called the third marshal of the Riddermark."
Yeah, Éomer's got some wisdom, you know.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, this guy's insulting me now.
Yeah.
In a way, but Éomer's got this like cool temper.
You really should tell me your name first, but
I will tell you my name. Like, I'm not going to
Yes.
fight you. I got 100 of my guys with me, you know.
Yeah. But Gimli's like, "Hey, you're talking about the Lady of the Wood, my guy.
My girlfriend.
She gave me 3 of her hairs. So we're pretty much dating."
And they're right here in this book. Let me show you.
I basically got 3 or 4 hairs, so it was wicked hot. All right, it was really hot.
Gimli. Don't talk bad about my Canadian girlfriend.
Let Gimli, the dwarf, glowing son, warn you against foolish words. You speak evil of that which is fair beyond your reach of thought, and only little wit can excuse you. He's like, look, I know you're dumb, and so that's why I'm not going to use my axe right now. All right?
Yeah.
You're talking about my girl, all right? And then here Éomer loses his temper, and he's like, I would cut your head off, beard and all, master dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground.
What a great insult.
And then Legolas whips out his bow.
That's my boyfriend you're talking to.
Hey, you got beef with my boy? You got beef with me.
This is complicated. This is like a complicated homosocial relationship here. We got like Galadriel, we got Legolas and Gimli, you know, and I think Aragorn's a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
Like, guys, come on.
Yeah. Says Éomer, like, so Legolas is basically like, hey, you would die before your stroke fell.
Yeah.
All right. And Aragorn stands between them. He's like, your pardon, Éomer. When you know more, you will understand why you have angered my companions. We intend no evil to Rohan, nor to any of his folk. Will you not hear us out before you strike? And Éomer's like, yeah, I will, but you're a guest in my land, so you would be wise to be less haughty in these days of doubt. And then he says, please, like, tell me your right name. Like, I know you're not really named Strider. All right. So Éomer has like kind of an intuition that maybe really only like Galadriel or Frodo or like other people that we've seen who are like really wise are able to see past like Aragorn's guys.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
He doesn't like believe for a minute that this guy is just a ranger. He's like, no, you're more than that.
Yeah. Who are you actually? Right.
And Aragorn's like, I'll tell you, but I want to know first that you're a friend. You know, are you in league with the Dark Lord of Mordor? And, you know, there's been rumors like all up until this point, starting at the Council of Elrond.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's just come up like 3 or 4 times up to this point. It's like, hey, you know, people heard rumors that like Rohan was in league with Mordor, that they'd given horses to Mordor. But Boromir didn't believe it. Aragorn doesn't believe it. Gandalf doesn't believe it. But he has to make sure before he like reveals himself to Éomer. And Éomer gives him assurances like, hey, no, like we're enemies of the orcs and we're enemies to the Dark Lord. You know, we don't serve the power of the Dark Land, but neither are we yet at open war with him. And if you are fleeing from him, then you had best leave this land. So he's like, hey, like we're not fully at war with Sauron yet, but also like, you know, we're not a fan of orcs. And in fact, we were just hunting orcs.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked him, like, who do you serve? You know, it's like, you ask me who I serve. How about you?
Yeah. Can we like get a little back and forth going here? Like frankly, Éomer is like ceding a lot considering he's in like the position of power here. It says a lot about Éomer. I serve no man, said Aragorn.
Yeah.
But the servants of Sauron I pursue into whatever land they may go. Is he he's really only able to say that because he's destined to be king, right? I mean, that's the sort of like social relationship here, the way that people think about power. I serve no man.
You know, and so getting a little bit into the politics here, this is I always hesitate to start talking about the lore because I'm in no means like
right.
It gets hard to parse, and about half the time I think I understand it and I don't. But as I understand it, the Riders of Rohan, they are part of the Aerlingus. Okay, they have a king. Okay, they were given this land by Gondor, because they came and helped Gondor in a time of need.
Mm-hmm.
But they are still loyal to Gondor, right? So they have their own king, and like they are like sovereign over their lands, but the king of Gondor would still be like above them in the pecking order. And so when Aragorn reveals himself here, he slings out his sword. When he says like, "Who do you serve?" You know, he basically said like, you know, to Éomer, he's like, you know, "Are you in league with the Dark Lord?" And Éomer's like, "We're in league with no one. All right. All we want is to be free in our own lands. You know, and we would have welcomed strangers in a happier time, but it is not happy times."
Right. Yeah.
And so we have to be vigilant. But like the Dark Lord is not my king. We are sovereign. We are our own people. But Aragorn, he whips out his sword and he says, "I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn. I'm called Elisar the Elfstone, Dunedain, the heir of Isildur, Elendil's son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly." What he's doing himself there is he is like revealing himself as the heir to the king of Gondor.
Yeah, he's claiming his authority over Rohan as well as Gondor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, you know, Gimli and Legolas get this vision of Aragorn.
Yes. They see him as he truly is.
Yeah, he seemed to have grown in stature, while Éomer had shrunk. And in his living face they caught a brief vision of the power and majesty of the kings of stone, which is the Argonath.
Right. It says this in the eyes of Legolas. A white flame flickered on the brows of Aragorn like a shining crown.
Yeah, fascinating.
So he's like becoming like so true to himself that it's like impossible for him to hide his majesty.
Right. Which is so interesting because he just called himself Strider. You know, and he's been in this, there's this real like tension between who he has been and who he's becoming, or who he is, right? I think that's so fascinating that it comes, you know, just here, like on the side of a hill, like in grasslands, you know, but they really need to be able to be in this place because they're still wanting to know what happened to their friends.
It's interesting. Like Éomer says, dreams and legends spring to life out of the grass. So it's like for them, you know, these are like legendary things, like the sword that was broken, the heir of Isildur, you know, the Lady of the Wood. Like it'd just be like, imagine if someone came up to us saying these things. But Éomer has insight, and he's like, you know, like I think this guy is like telling the truth. You know, it's against their law to let them go. And there's several times in the book, we've already had a couple of these. You know, when they go up to Lothlorien, the elves are like, "Can't let a dwarf through. Sorry, against the law. Can't do it." And they have to kind of talk them into breaking their own law. Here, he's like, "We're at war, guys. Like, sorry. No one but the Rohirrim are allowed in these lands. That's why we just killed this orc host. And here you are, just as strange to us. And we have to decide whether to let you go or not." And so now Aragorn has to kind of like talk his way out of this one the same way that they talked their way out of, you know, basically being arrested and turned away in Lothlorien. And he's like, you know, "We're hunting orcs. And they took our friends and we're trying to catch them." And Éomer's like, "You don't need to pursue them any further. Like, they're destroyed. Like, we killed them all." And he says, "And our friends?" And he goes, "There were none but orcs there." And he's like, "Are you sure? I mean, they would just be children in your eyes. Like, you know, they'd be clad in gray. They wouldn't be wearing any shoes." And he says, "There were no dwarves. There were no children. We counted all the slain. There was only orcs."
Does he say they wouldn't be wearing shoes?
Yeah, he says, "They would be small, only children to your eyes, unshod, but clad in gray."
Yet more evidence that hobbits don't wear shoes.
I know that hobbits don't wear shoes, Logan. Okay, now you're just
not even across the mountains, Zach.
Now you're just being mean. I'm just saying that it was irresponsible of the party to let little guys walk without shoes in the snow. All right, of course they almost froze to death. All right, it's just basic. It's just basic.
It's so funny.
I quit. I quit the pod.
I don't like this anymore.
I hate when we quarrel. I hate when we quarrel.
Let's not argue.
So they're kind of met with this choice, you know, and Éomer, like some of Éomer's boys, they're like, time is pressing. We must hasten south. Let us leave these wild folk to their fancies, or let us bind them and take them to the king. So like he's already got people being like, F them up, Éomer, F them up, you know, like we ain't got time for this, right? But Éomer is like, no, like there's something special here. Like legends don't just spring out of the grass like this every day, you know? And even though it's against our law, he is like considering letting them go. But he asked them basically where they came from. And Aragorn is like, look, it's been 4 days since Boromir, who's known to you, was slain. He was part of our company. And we came from the shadow of Tol Brandir. And Éomer goes, on foot? Yes, even as you see us, he responds. Wide wonder came into Aramis' eyes. Strider is too poor a name, son of Arathorn. Wingfoot, I name you. This deed of the three fen shall be sung in many a hall. 40 leagues and 5 you have measured ere the 4th day is ended. Hardy is the race of Elendil. So he's amazed at how far the company has been able to run. And then Gimli asks, like a second time now, like, do you not pay tribute to Sauron? So he's like, okay, you don't claim him to be your lord or whatever, but do you not even give him horses or anything? And Éomer says, we do not, and we never have. You know, he steals all our black horses, but we've never given them as tribute. Our chief concern is with Sauron. He walks here and there, having many guises. He's both cunning and dwemer crafty. They say he seems as an old man hooded and cloaked, very like to Gandalf, many now recall.
Aragorn sort of claims his own sovereignty. I will come when I may. They have this debate. Why don't you come now? Like, we could actually use some strength.
Yeah.
You know, because we're up against it.
He says, I cannot desert my friends while hope remains.
They really, I mean, they have to push beyond the realm of law and politics into sort of a man-to-man kind of. Yeah. Everyone's like, what would you do?
Yeah.
You know, you have to let me track this down because I need to know what happened to my friends.
And Aragorn's like, you know, can you swear that none escaped your net? And he's like, no, I mean, like, we counted every body. And he's like, well, you passed right by us. And they're wearing the same clothes that we are.
Exactly.
It's like, you passed us even in the full light of day. And Éomer says, it's hard to be sure of anything among so many marvels. The world has all grown strange. Elf and dwarf and company walk in our daily fields, and folk speak with the Lady of the Wood and yet live. And the sword comes back to war that was broken in the long ages ere the fathers of our fathers rode into the mark. How shall a man judge what to do in such times? And Aragorn says, as he ever has judged, good and ill have not changed since yesteryear, nor are they one thing among elves and dwarves and another among men. It is a man's part to discern them, as much in the golden wood as in his own house.
Yeah, so he's saying you need to check in with what is the good, what is true, beyond legend and beyond politics and beyond current events. There's something steadfast and true that you know is in your heart is right. And because we already have evidence that Éomer is a person who can like see beyond just the surface level. And I think that Aragorn trusts that in this moment.
So they're kind of stuck at a crossroads. Éomer's like, look, I'm not free to do my own thing. Like, I'm not my own king. I'm not free to do as I would. But he says, but loath am I to begin a battle of 100 against 3. He's like, look, like, I don't want to let you go, but I also don't want to slaughter you. You know, and I don't feel like I have a good choice here. And Aragorn responds, he goes, you know, never in former days would any high lord of this land have constrained a man to abandon such a quest as mine.
Yeah, it appeals to tradition and culture.
Exactly. He says, come now, son of Aemond. The choice must be made at last. Aid us, or at the worst, let us go free. Or seek to carry out your law. If you do so, there will be fewer to return to your war or to your king. So he's like, look, if you don't let us go, like, we're going to fight, and a few of you are going to die. You'll probably kill us too. But
right. we're
both fighting the same enemy. Like, you know, we're both enemies of the same enemy.
What they don't do here is what the orcs do later, right? Or have already done,
right.
Which is fight amongst themselves. And And so that common purpose unites them, or their common, not exactly their common enemy, but their common spirit of whatever.
Right and wrong.
Right and wrong, honor and
yeah.
virtue.
Right and wrong isn't one thing to men and one thing to dwarves and one thing to elves. Like right and wrong is right and wrong.
And he says it's not written in law; it's written, in your heart, basically, the heart of the people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he does this kind of unprecedented thing. He gives them horses from the men that he lost in this most recent battle. And he says, "You may go. What is more, I will lend you horses. This only I ask. When your quest is achieved or is proved vain, return with the horses over the Entwade to Meduseld, the high house of Edoras where Theoden now sits. Thus you shall prove to him that I have not misjudged. In this I place myself, and maybe my very life, in the keeping of your good faith. Do not fail." And Aragorn says, "I will not." And Gimli's like, "Dog, I ain't riding on no horse."
Not too excited about riding on a horse. So they really only need 2 horses because he's going to be sitting
I'm still
behind.
pissed he talked bad about my girlfriend. Now you want me to ride on the back of a horse?
He's got to wrap his arms around Legolas's waist on the back of the horse. I love the detail that Gimli was lifted up behind his friend and he clung to him. Not much more at ease than Sam Gamgee in a boat. Oh, I love it.
If you can read this shirt, the dwarf fell off.
Exactly. That's so funny.
A little bit of elf lore given here that Legolas took the saddle and reins off because he doesn't need.
Oh yeah, he doesn't need a saddle.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I need them not. And he rode him the elf fashion.
Farewell, and may you find what you seek, cried Éomer. Return with what speed you may, and let our swords hereafter shine together. I will come, said Aragorn.
And I will come too, said Gimli. The matter of the Lady Galadriel lies still between us. I have yet to teach you gentle speech.
They're at a level now where they can kind of joke with each other. Everyone's like, okay, we'll see.
It's like, hey, remember when I told you I was going to chop your head off? That was funny.
That was pretty cool.
So we're getting kind of to the end of the chapter here. So they use their horses and they come upon the burning remains of the Uruk-hai. It says, upon a stake in the middle was set a great goblin head. Upon its shattered helm, the white badge could still be seen.
Goblin. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting use of the word goblin. A great goblin. It says Aragorn and his companions searched far and wide about the field of battle, but the light faded, and evening soon drew down, dim and misty. By nightfall, they had discovered no trace of Merry and Pippin. Gimli suggests that the burned bones of the hobbits are now mingled with the orcs. And this is a heartbreaking line. It says, "It will be hard news for Frodo if he lives to hear it, and hard too for the old hobbit who waits in Rivendell. Elrond was against their coming. But Gandalf was not,"
Right.
said Legolas.
Again, that appealed to Gandalf. But I like this, that it says, I mean, even if they are dead here, the Council of Gandalf was not founded on foreknowledge of safety for himself or for others. There are some things that are better to begin than to refuse. So even though the end is dark or the end is painful or there's suffering involved, you still begin.
You got to try.
And he's sort of rooted to this place in this moment where we're going to wait until the morning so we can actually see what happened.
Yeah.
They're not in a rush anymore. They're in a more of that investigative kind of phase of this.
Yeah.
And they end up camping.
And they make a fire,
Yeah, by Fangorn. There's a whole debate about whether they should
chop any wood.
Should they have a fire? We're by this freaky wood, and Legolas is staring into the woods.
Yeah, and he's like, this is
it's haunted,
This is old. All right, and that means a lot coming from me.
Yeah, this is old, and then Aragorn says it's maybe the only woods that are older are the ones up by the Shire.
Yeah.
The old forest.
But Gimli's like, the riders left Chip and Bow enough for all of us. Let's just make a little fire and keep ourselves warm. Like, we're gonna freeze to death here. So they stake their horses. They light a fire.
Gimli just wants to be comfortable. I love it. There's a really weird detail that they light the fire and then the tree that's sort of hanging over them like reaches out toward the fire.
It says it may have been that the dancing shadows tricked their eyes, but certainly to each of the companions the boughs appeared to be bending this way and that as to come above the flames, while the upper branches were stooping down. The brown leaves now stood out stiff and rubbed together like many cold, cracked hands, taking comfort in its warmth.
Aragorn has to warn Gimli again, don't cut anything off these trees. Let's just take the ones that are already down.
Keep that axe.
Let the fire die.
Yeah.
And then again, we get this cool detail about Legolas. That he was he lay down, he's motionless, and he's got his hands on his breast, but his eyes are open, and it says, blending living night and deep dream, as is the way with elves. So it's just this odd daydreaming quality, but he's also not alert enough to be the watchman.
No.
So Gimli's awake, and then Legolas is doing this elf thing, meditation thing.
We also got our first little mention of the Ents.
Yeah, I love that.
So Legolas asks Aragorn, he says, Celeborn warned us not to go far into Fangorn. Do you know why, Aragorn? What are the fables of the forest that Boromir had heard? So, Boromir was like, hey, stay the heck out of Fangorn Forest. Celeborn was like, hey, whatever you do, don't go into Fangorn Forest. So now they're on the edge of it. And Legolas is like, hey, Aragorn, I'm not scared or anything, but I was wondering, is there anything that you know about Fangorn Forest and why we should be afraid of it? And Aragorn's like, I've heard many tales in Gondor and elsewhere, but if it were not for the words of Celeborn, I should deem them only fables that men have made as true knowledge fades. I thought basically of asking you what you knew about it, Legolas. And Legolas is like, well, I've heard nothing of this in my own land, save only songs that tell how the Onodrim that men call Ents dwelt here long ago, for Fangorn is old even as the elves would reckon it. So this is the first little insight that we get to, that the trees might be more than trees. And now a great mystery is introduced here on the last page. So they're all resting. Gimli is taking watch. And he is hunched on his axe. There's no sound except for the trees rustling. Gimli looks up, and just on the edge of the firelight stood an old bent man leaning on a staff. And wrapped in a great cloak, his wide-brimmed hat was pulled down over his eyes. So Aragorn cautiously invites him in. He says, well, father, what can we do for you? Come and be warm if you are cold. He strode forward, but the old man was gone. There was no trace of him to be found near at hand. They did not dare to wander far. The moon had set, and the night was very dark.
Aragorn goes with hospitality.
Yeah. He's not a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy.
Yeah, why don't you come over and sit with us instead of being weird and standing on the edge of the forest? Come on. But next thing you know, the horses are gone.
The horses.
The mystery here is this a appearance of Gandalf or an appearance of Saruman, right? And we get a little debate about his clothing because he's wearing a hat, not a cloak. But I question, I guess I question Éomer. Couldn't cloaked mean, be hooded or
right.
Having a hat on. But I think the fact that the horses are sort of either spooked or stolen away, is a sign that it's Saruman, or it's not not that Saruman is there, but that Saruman is doing that like astral projection.
He's behind it.
Thing, you know?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Éomer calls him Dwemer crafty. He says that he's seen walking like an old man cloaked and hooded. So Gimli takes that to mean like this is definitely Sauron, especially now that the horses are gone. He's like, I think it was Sauron. Who else? Remember the words of Éomer. He walks like an old man, hooded and cloaked. Those were the words. He has gone off with our horses or scared them away, and here we are. There is more trouble coming to us, mark my words. He's basically like, hey, the horses had our food on them. Like we can't eat. Like, we don't have any horses. We're outside this haunted forest. Like, things really suck. Like, I'm so sorry, Gimli. They really do. But Aragorn responds, I marked these things. But I marked also this man had a hat and not a hood. So he's like, I don't think this is Sauron. So what do you think? Is this Sauron or is this Gandalf? I do think there is an answer. Where do you land?
The hat makes me want to say it's Gandalf. And the fact that they do meet Gandalf here pretty soon. But the fact the horses are gone really makes me lean towards Saruman. But I don't know. Horses are spooked, get spooked by all. Horses are such like.
Don't need a wizard for that.
Yeah, such like timid animals that it's possible that it is Gandalf. I want it to be Gandalf.
I think that we will shortly get an answer. But I don't think it's clear. I think like Tolkien was totally okay with it not being
clear
solved.
Right here.
Mm-hmm. Like Tolkien knew if it was Gandalf or Sauron.
Okay, gotcha.
But he doesn't necessarily spell it out. So I think we'll get like a little bit more clarity as we read on.
Cool.
But Aragorn says, yet in the meantime, there's nothing that we can do but rest while we may. I will watch for a while now, Gimli. I have more need of thought than sleep. The old man did not appear again, and the horses did not return. So that's the end of the chapter. Nice long chapter.
Long. There's a lot that happens in that chapter. Well, thank you, as always, for reading along with us. Next week, we'll be reading Book 3, Chapter 3, The Uruk-hai. And of course, as always, if you want to help us out, please share the podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. You can follow us in all the places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and visit us at waywardwizards.com. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us at info@waywardwizards.com. And until next week, let our swords hereafter shine together. We'll see you then.
See you next week.